What's up, guys? Welcome to a new episode with your Young Guns podcast. This is your a special episode, essentially. Once again, talking about why they so good. Um, we have a what I would say, in my opinion, an interesting situation here because St. Louis was not supposed to be as good as they are right now. They lost a lot of notable pieces, but they also gained a lot of notable pieces, essentially. So, I mean, that's really fantastic on their part, and a lot of standouts that really stepped up their game this season, and it really helped the team elevate and push them to basically a top 10 position this season. So, notably, they added Vucinovic. They traded a second round pick in Sammy Blaze for him. They signed Brandon Sad for 5 years, and the standouts this season have been Robert Thomas, Ville Huso, Buchnevich, and Kairu. And yeah, so Luca's gonna mention the guys who are basically absent from this year's
Yeah.
NHL season.
Well, I mean, look, like as you mentioned, right? There's a few notable names that they brought in, but obviously there's a few guys that they lost too throughout the year that were guys that played a role for St. Louis throughout their seasons and whatever. Obviously, they lost Jaden Schwartz to the expansion draft with Seattle. They obviously lost Vince Dunn as well, so that doesn't help. Losing two big pieces like that, or they didn't lose Schwartz to the expansion draft. They lost him in free agency, but he essentially he essentially was going to get picked by Seattle. Mike Hoffman's another one that they had ended up losing, which was a big one. And then obviously they also traded away Zach Sanford. Sanford ended up in Ottawa in a deal that brought Logan Brown back to St. Louis, which was cool. And obviously, Sammy Blaze, another one that kind of left St. Louis. And I think what's interesting about this season is I think you kind of see that St. Louis went for a younger team and a younger approach, right? They knew that these guys, like Jaden Schwartz, like Mike Hoffman, whatever, they knew that these guys were going to play, were not going to be part of their success moving forward, right? You look at a guy like Robert Thomas. He's had a fantastic season this year. He's been really, really good. Same goes for Jordan Kyrou, made the All-Star game, whatever the case is. St. Louis has had some really, really good performances from their young guys. And I think that says a lot about, their team as a whole, because I think that it makes them afford losing guys like Hoffman, losing guys like Schwartz, and replacing them with, these the Kyrou and the Robert Thomas. The other thing that I really, really enjoy is they went to go lose a defenseman like Vince Dunn. Now, whether Blues fans like that or not, I know that there was a little bit of issues in regards to Vince Dunn in St. Louis, and I know that he wasn't really, really happy with his playing time. But I think that Nico Mikkola and obviously Scott Perunovic, too, who's played a couple of games for the Blues, they've looked really, really good for St. Louis. And I think that that's a real positive sign for them, seeing that they've been able to, kind of replace what Vince Dunn brought to them. So I really, really like what they've done over there. And obviously, Ville Husso has been a big story for them as well. He's been fantastic. He's outplaying Jordan Binnington at the moment. And I think that's something that nobody really expected going into this season. That's ended up being a big part of the reason why they're successful. So what do you guys think?
Oh, I want to go back on your point on Robert Thomas being a player that really exceeded expectation. I think him and Jordan Kyrou have been excellent, and they're going to be the face of the franchise moving forward. I would
Like a
say.
1-2 punch, basically.
Yeah, Pavel Buchnevich was an amazing acquisition, and they got him for pretty much a steal. And that was a big loss, for the Rangers. But I'm actually surprised they're playing as well as they are, because Mike Hoffman, I mean, he's not playing the best with Montreal, but no one on that team is. But he was good with the Blues. I mean, on the power plays, he was playing very well. And let's not forget they lost a few years, 2 years ago. Pietrangelo, or was it 2 years ago? Last
Yeah,
season. Last
it was
season.
2 years ago.
2 years ago, and he wasn't really replaced with anyone.
Well,
Like
they did
you
bring in
could,
Torrey Krug, but
he's no Pietrangelo.
exactly,
He's no
exactly.
Pietrangelo. So, I mean, I know we're gonna get into what they should be doing maybe for for trade deadline. But their defense is solid. The offense is solid. Bennington. Uh, I mean, you could put in a little bit of tweaking, I would say, but I mean, overall, it's a pretty good, surprisingly, really, it's a good team.
One
To,
guy I forgot to mention actually that's been having a very good season is Ivan Barbashev as
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So this
Well,
mention going back to Cairo, he currently has 42 points in 41 games. Obviously, he's gonna have, by the time that people are watching this video, he's gonna increase his points, and by the end of the season, I could see him finishing with probably 60 to 70 points if he continues this so-called hot streak or breakout season.
Oh,
You
we
have
forgot to mention Tarasenko too, playing
yeah,
pretty
Tarasenko,
good year
yeah.
too. So we
Tarasenko's
can't
having
forget
a
about
very
him.
good year too. 40 points in 41 games for a guy that requested a trade that had wanted nothing to do with St. Louis during the offseason. And they tried moving him. Even Seattle took a look into trying to acquire him and try to fit him under a cap, but they didn't go that route. So Tarasenko was stuck playing with St. Louis. Everyone thought he was going to play. He was going to be miserable and play like he didn't care. But instead, he did the opposite of what most players do. He
Yeah.
tried to increase his value by playing the best hockey we've seen from Tarasenko in the last couple of seasons. I know he's been injured a couple of times throughout the last couple of years, so that kind of like halted his production. But being able to see Tarasenko back at this elite form
Yeah.
is very encouraging for St.
Well,
Louis, and hopefully
well,
he stays with them moving
one
forward.
thing that I gotta say, I know we're talking about why the Blues are so good, but I want to kind of make this a little bit of a notable mention. Jordan Binnington this season has really struggled a lot, and I think that I don't. That's a compliment to how well the other Blues goalies have played in his place. Right, Binnington's got an 898 save percentage. He's 11 10 and 3. He hasn't been great, and I think it's a worry if you're the St. Louis Blues going into the playoffs because you've got Ville Husso who's playing really really good hockey. He's having one of the best seasons. He's having a career year. He's showing that he's capable of playing a bigger role for St. Louis, and he's outperforming Binnington. And I think that if you're Jordan Binnington and you look at the contract that they signed him to, I think there's a worry there that that contract's going to end up being a bad deal because Jordan Binnington has not lived up to expectations. And what's interesting about that is you go and look at a guy like John Gillies, who's in New Jersey now, but played a game with St. Louis. He had a good game when he played over there. And Charlie Lindgren as well. Charlie Lindgren came in and looked really, really good for the St. Louis Blues when he played.
Surprisingly, because a
Yeah,
lot of people thought, this guy is nothing but an AHL
that's it.
goalie, and
And
that's happens to be because Montreal never really gave him an opportunity to
that's it.
showcase his capabilities as a NHL goaltender, which the
And
St.
and
Louis Blues were able to do.
And what I really like is that it kind of again it goes back to something that I was going to say before, and I actually I wanted to mention it. St. Louis has had some really good depth this season. If you look at their point scorers and you look at everyone on their roster, right? A lot of guys are doing really good. We're talking about guys like Kyrou, Tarasenko, Buchnevich, Barbashev, Robert Thomas. Ryan O'Reilly, yes, he's a -3, but he still got 30 points in 41 games, which is very, very doable. Torrey Krug, 27 points in 40 games. He's looked good. Saad, you maybe want to expect a little bit more out of Brandon Saad, but you know what? 25 points. He's got 15 goals. He's on pace for about between 25 and 30. That's not bad for a guy like Brandon Saad, especially for what you signed him for.
I would say Krug is having a better season this year than he did
Yeah,
last year.
Braden Shen too. Look, he's been out for a little bit, but since he's come back, he's looked really really good. And obviously, there's David Perron as well, who yes, it's not fantastic numbers, but he's playing decently enough that he's still getting points. And what I
He
like
had a
about
good start to the season though, and then
yeah,
he got hurt, and then once he
that's it.
came back, he's somewhat struggled. I
Yeah,
don't know, maybe if he's dealing with a nagging injury. You never know what's going
no,
on behind closed
exactly.
doors.
But
So
what I really, really like is the depth. And I think that that's what makes the St. Louis team so good is that they're going to go into, if they're going to make the playoffs and they're going to be good in the playoffs. But I think what's going to be fun is the fact that they've got guys that can score on every line and they're able to have a situation where it's not one guy producing, it's multiple people on multiple lines. And that's really, really good to have. I mean, look, they're eighth in the league in goals forward, 10th in the league in goals against. They're a well-rounded team. They're a top 10 team in the league, and they're playing really, really well. But I'm very interested in seeing what they do at the deadline because I think they do need one more defenseman.
Yeah,
And
they
I think
do.
that's something that they should definitely look at going into the trade deadline.
And two notable names on defense. Yes, they're not the because they're not the most flashiest players, and I know we mentioned so many forwards that have been standouts, and including a goaltender. But concerning defense, Bartuzo and Mikola have been two very shut down defensemen that I
Yeah.
think that really contributed to St. Louis's defense. Yes, you maybe even push Scandella to the side to
I
a
I
certain
think
degree.
I think that's what I was going to mention before because you mentioned Bennington isn't playing the best, but his the first defensive line that they have, their main guy Pareko -15.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
Uh,
I think plus minus is it's tough to judge when you're
Well,
looking
I
at.
mean on average, most of the time he's on, there's goals going in the net.
No, I know, but what I'm trying to say is plus minus is a really tough stat to measure because sometimes there's different situations that are looking at. But I think with Colin Pareko, it's definitely not been a great season for him defensively. I think that he's struggled on multiple occasions this season, and I think that that's kind of why I was going back to what I was mentioning before of the defense. They need a guy that's going to help Colton Pareko out because again, -15, like you said, whether you measure it or not, that's not a good number to be. And he's got 19 points in 41 games. The offense is he's a defensive defenseman. So at the end of the day, you're not expecting a guy to get like 50 points, but he's supposed to be a really good defensive player, and he's kind of struggled a little bit this season, and I'm kind of surprised about that.
It's a
But I think
pretty
if they
big
get a guy
struggle.
to compliment him, it would be okay.
look, I'm also gonna add that I'm gonna ask you guys a question. Defense is the problem here, and we could all agree that the offense has been nothing but superb.
I don't think defense is the problem, but I think
It's
it's
not
coming.
it's not a problem, but if you had to pick a problem out of what we see, the defense would be the thing
Yeah,
to
it's the
fix.
weakest
It's
spot because you have an internal goaltending, basically, I would say, yeah, internal like battle between Lindgren, Bennington, and Huso. Even though it's more between Bennington and Huso and Lindgren, just like waiting to see like how it all unfolds. The offense, they're sixth in goals, averaging 3.44. Their power play second in the league, 27.6. Shots on goal, yes, it's mid tier. It's the ranked 16, so 30.9. But their shooting percentage is high, at 11.1, ranked fourth in the league. Um, their penalty kill, surprisingly, we said defense is the problem. It's ranked fourth actually. So it's at 84.6%, and
I
the
I
penalty
think
minutes are ranked 11. So obviously they're a team that takes a lot of penalties, but their goals allowed 13. So they're
I
not
think
that bad defensively, to be
I
honest. But
think
yet,
Blues fans can agree with me that I think the biggest disappointment this season has been Jordan Binnington. And I think that yes, you can say the defense has been the weak spot, but I think Jordan Binnington's been the weak spot. And I'm just going to come out and say it. I mean, look, you've got a guy like Ville Husso who is not he wasn't a starter going into this season. He was considered a backup, and he's got a 941 save percentage. Regardless of how you look at that, the guy gets paid 750,000 league minimum contract. Okay, he's coming in. He's 9-3-1. He looks fantastic. He's got a 941 save percentage, and he's got two less wins than Jordan Binnington has this season. And I think that that's the biggest problem. When you pay a goaltender to be your best player, and he's not your best player, and he's getting paid $6 million for God knows how long, it it doesn't look good for your $6 million goalie because, again, you know you pay goalies to be good, and Jordan Binnington is under 900 save percentage.
Six
That is
million
not
until 2027.
Yeah, that's not good at all, right? For an 898 goalie, that's not good. And the fact that Ville Husso is a free agent at the end of the season, St. Louis is going to have to make tough decisions here because I'm sorry, if you're a St. Louis Blues fan, yes, they're playing well, and I'm not taking anything away from the fact they're playing well. But if you're a St. Louis Blues fan, you must be really, really nervous going into the playoffs with Jordan Binnington as your goalie.
but
If
not
he's your starting goalie going into the playoffs, I'm very, very nervous for this team
but not only
because I
that.
don't know.
Okay, there's a lot of teams looking to add a goaltender. You have Edmonton. You have
Yeah, they're
to
not
a
going to
certain.
take Binnington at
I
that
would
price.
maybe even put Montreal up there, depending on how they assess the Carey Price Allen situation. Um, The Ottawa Senators, I would say they're pretty much in a good spot. Who else would be
I
looking
don't
Here,
at
think St.
here's
Louis
goaltending?
here,
trade. If
here's
you're
the
trying to
thing.
imply that
Here,
Blues are going to trade Binnington, I don't think it's going to happen. But
you
anyways,
guys, I'm gonna bring a Habs anecdote into this. Remember the Halak Carey Price situation where the
Yeah,
backup goalie was gonna take Price's job, and then they ended up going with Price anyways, even
yeah,
after he had a catastrophic season, and then it turned out being okay.
yeah.
You think that they would do this with oh my god, is Hosa?
Huso.
No, it's
Huso.
Huso.
Sorry
I,
about
I
that.
I'm going to
Huso.
say no, and
I
the
was
reason
thinking
why
of Marion Hosa for some reason.
I think they could do that
Huso.
in the sense where the backup comes in and takes the starter's
No,
job.
no, no, no. That's
But
not what I'm saying. Do you see them? Do you see them trading the backup goalie comes this deadline to maybe acquire some pieces
no,
Well,
and bringing in
Edmonton,
Lindgren as the backup?
I'm
Edmonton
going
has
to tell
been
you. I'm going
linked
to tell
to
you right now,
Huso, by the way.
Philly Huso is not going anywhere. And if
Ville
St. Louis
Huso has
trades,
been connected to the Edmonton Oilers because they're looking at they're assessing their goaltending
Because
situation. Which is
this guy's
horrible.
contract is expiring this season,
yes,
so he's
Yeah,
gonna
but
be
I don't
asking
think he
for a
goes
hell of a lot
anywhere.
more than 750K.
yeah, but
Yeah,
it's
of
not going to be
course.
that much more because he hasn't proven himself consistently. He's only had a really good year this
Yeah,
year.
it's only 1 year. It could be just a spontaneous year where it's a one and done, and he never puts up those numbers ever again.
Yeah,
But
it
he's
But
could
played
be,
really,
but
really well.
let's say he gets paid, I don't know, $2 million. I would feel like that would be a
Okay.
fair
two,
amount.
two, to- two to
Yes.
$3 million
Two
is
to
the
three.
is the
Okay, well,
range.
for argument's sake, we'll say $3 million.
And
Nine million
yeah,
dollars on goalies. That's a lot of
Yeah, but
money.
you know what? To be honest, and people are gonna might disagree with me here, and you know what? If they do, that's fine. To be honest, when Jordan Binnington signed that contract, he wasn't playing well anyways. You know, you look at it goes back to after the Stanley Cup run. What has Jordan Binnington done since the Stanley Cup win that they've had, where he's looked good? You know, if you go look at his other stats, yes, last year, you know, you can argue 9-10 save percentage. The year before that, 9-12. But in the bubble, I don't know if anybody remembers that, but in the bubble, Jake Allen outplayed him, right? So I think the
he
problem,
essentially saved their playoff hopes
yes,
too.
and what I
He
think,
gave them
what
a
I
little
think,
bit of life, but not too much. They
yeah,
didn't last
but I
that
think
long, anyways.
what's interesting with Jordan Bennington is I don't think he's been horrible in recent years. I think he's been good, but I think people overhype how good this goaltender is. I think I think he reminds me a little bit of kind of what Matt Murray was in Pittsburgh, right? He had a couple of playoff runs. He was a decent goalie that, you know, or a good goalie that, you know, had a really good team in front of him. But I don't think he's this elite goalie that's going to come into a team and look really, really good. I think Huso's outplayed him this year, and I think Bennington struggled a lot. But the concern for me is not a question of how bad Bennington's been, but more of is this going to continue in future years? And that's why I don't think they move Huso. Because even if you sign Huso for 2 years, if next season Jordan Binnington comes in and has another season where he's under 900 or he struggles again, then you can have the conversation of, okay, we may have a goaltending issue here because we're paying a guy that isn't playing up to par. I know it's 1 year and I know that he just got this extension, but all I'm saying is I think if you're a St. Louis Blues fan and if you're the Blues coach, if you're Craig Berube, in my opinion, who by the way just got a 3-year contract extension, so congrats to him. But I think you have a decision to make going into the playoffs because Huso, for me, has really, really played well to the point where I think you go with the goalie that's hot, in my opinion. If that's,
Whether
I mean, we'll see what happens between now and the end of the year. But I'm saying right now, if I were to make a decision as a Blues coach, I'm going Ville Huso and net over Jordan Binnington.
whether or not, okay, he gets moved at the deadline, which I think is unlikely. They're not going to
I
move
don't think so.
anything. They're going to be buyers. They're not going to even consider the fact that, like, oh my god, we have UFAs during the offseason. They
Yeah.
don't care about that. It's about winning now, especially with the season that they're having. They should go all in. They should not consider, oh, let's try to get some value on guys that are having spontaneous seasons that and may not ever repeat this ever again. They're just gonna roll with the team that they have and just add. But if there were like teams that were to offer deals for in sorry in terms of offering a deal to acquire Huso during the deadline or maybe even sign him in the offseason, you have to consider teams like Arizona, Buffalo,
No,
Chicago if they move Fleury at the deadline or if he decides to retire.
I
Those
just,
are teams that I would essentially think that desperately need goaltending, and
I don't think,
they're
I
re-
don't think.
they're
I
rebuilding too. So adding a guy like Huso is a fresh start for the organization and a fresh face to lead the goaltending. But i-
I'm
is
gonna
he
be honest.
essentially
St. Louis
ready
would be
enough?
really fun.
Is he good enough to be a number one
Yeah.
starter? Um, a number one goalie or like the starter? I don't think so. To be honest, I think it's too early to tell. I think he's just benefiting off a high, and I think he's just for the moment at most a very solid backup goaltender.
I think one thing that teams make a lot of, for me, I'm not the type of guy to overhype a goalie, right? And I don't like to overhype or overanalyze because some goalies have good years and some goalies have bad years, and you always have to look at the sample size. I've always been a big fan of Billy Huso. I've always believed in Billy Huso because I think that he's a really, really good goalie. The problem that I have is that he hasn't played enough NHL games for me to look at it and say this guy's going to go to a team like Edmonton or a team like Arizona and continue the success that he's had. Now, I'm not saying he's not. He may go to free agency next year, get a contract of $2-3 million with a different team. Let's say Arizona, for example, goes to Arizona and continues the same success he's got in St. Louis, and then we can turn around and have a different conversations because some goalies get better over time. What I'm saying is that if you're St. Louis going into this trade deadline, your thought process shouldn't be what are we getting for Billy Huso? It should be what are we going to do to make sure that going into the playoffs, Jordan Binnington or Billy Huso have the proper defensive core in front of them so we can have the best success in the playoffs.
And that's a top four left-handed
Yes.
defenseman. And
And
we
I
have
think
three
the reason,
options.
yeah, and I think the reason for that is because yes, goaltending could be an issue, and yes, Jordan Binnington hasn't played well, but I think adding another defenseman, they've already got seven, and I think they've got a decent
Yeah,
chunk
so
of
right now
depth,
they have Krug paired
but
up
they
with
should add
Falk.
another one.
They need Pareko essentially to be paired up with another top four defenseman, which we're going to be naming
Yes,
three options. And then once they add that top four defenseman, you're going to have Scandella, Bortuzzo, and Mikola rotating on the third and last defensive pairing. So the three
yes,
names we have are Ben Sherratt. He's a UFA at the end of the season. He's currently being paid 3.5 million. We have Nick Leddy, who's being paid 5.5 million. And we have Jacob Chikrin, who signed until 2024,
wow,
2025, and he's being paid 4.6 million. Two of them, I named, are UFAs. The third one has term left, meaning he's gonna cost a lot more. So out of these three guys, which one is the perfect fit for the St. Louis
well,
Blues?
Ben Sherratt.
before uh, before you, well, Ben Sherratt, but let me just say something. St. Louis has no cap space. They currently have
Well, they're
$22,000.
going to be sending someone back.
Yeah,
Well, okay, but like that's the thing. Who do you trade? To me personally, the only guy that I see that they could trade in a deal, and it is David Perron and David Perron. And the reason why is not because I don't. I think it's because look, he's a UFA at the end of the year, so yes, you can keep him whatever. But you're not trading Brandon Saad, you're not trading Buchnevich, you're not trading Shen, you're not trading Tarasenko, and you're not trading O'Reilly. Even though Tarasenko's talked about wanting to leave, I think he's had a change of heart. And then the rest of the guys are Kyrou, Robert Thomas. Maybe they trade a guy like Oscar Sundqvist. I don't know.
That's what
But
I was going to mention. I feel like there what the rumors are is that Ben Sherratt is worth what, a first, a player, a first and a prospect.
they're saying that
two,
he's either
uh,
going to be paid in value. He's either going to be valued as a for. Oh, sorry, my God, no, I can't even speak today. He's either going to fetch a return of a first and a third, or a first and a prospect. That's what I'm hearing. But
yeah,
it will
kind of
be a
like
bidding
David
war.
Savard.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Just like David Savard last season, but it will be. It's been reported that it will be a bidding war for Ben Sherratt, as not only is a UFA, but his experience of 400. He's played over 450 NHL games. He's 6'3". He's known for his defensive minded style of game. Heavy hitter too, and like you were saying, pairing him up with a guy like Pareko, who's uh, minus 15, like you were saying, it's gonna balance that deep pairing as Ben Sherratt's more defensive. It allows Pareko to play more offensive, and Sherratt's gonna cover
Yeah.
Pareko's defensive mistakes. So I mean, logically, in terms of price, cap hit, and the player, Ben Sherratt is my go-to to fill in the left-handed role in the top four role for the
Can I be
St. Louis
honest?
Blues.
I know we're talking about adding defensemen, but I think personally, with how the way the team is structured and with everything that's been gone on and how well they've played and the fact that they have no cap space, I could definitely see a situation where they don't even add. And the reason I add a player, and the reason why I think that is because Scott Perunovich, who's injured right now at the moment, um, is still a relatively good defenseman, and he came in and looked decent with St. Louis when he's been there, and he's young and whatever. I think St. Louis have a good enough decor as it is to to do decently in the playoffs. Now, I know I said before that they should add. The question was is that they should add if they had the cap space to do it. Unfortunately, they don't, and they have a good defenseman in Scott Perunovich who's currently injured but will come back. And so I'm saying if you're St. Louis, right, if they really, really want to add someone, then they're gonna have to move a contract to do it. And I
Or you have to take this into consideration. If they're gonna add a guy like Nick Leddy, whose cap space is at 5.5 million, or Ben Sherratt, who's at 3.5 million, did you ever think that these two teams do have enough cap space to retain those contracts?
yeah, but
Meaning, not only will they get more for retaining their contracts, but that's gonna allow them
but
to fit those players onto the St. Louis's
it
cap
doesn't
hit.
it doesn't make sense because again, you have to think about it from St. Louis's perspective, right? Let's I'm not saying St. Louis is not a team that can, but in my opinion, I think St. Louis is not a team that's going to win the cup. They may go to the second round, third round. I think they're a team that's that good, but I don't know if they're a team that's going to win the cup. And to me, they've already got a really good foundation. What I mean by that is their defense, yes, it's on the older side if you look at it from a certain perspective, but they have a decent foundation already. And they've got guys that are coming up. Scott Perunovich, Nikola's 25 and still young. Jake Wallman's 25 and still young.
Vucevic,
So
he played a couple of games with St. Louis this
he's played
season.
19. He's played 19 games with
Yeah.
St. Louis this season. And he's got 6 points. Now I know it's not great, but I'm saying
Well, he is
why
young. He is young.
yeah, but
So
I'm saying why go at a guy like Ben Sherratt, right? When you already have a guy who's younger and arguably is probably better than Ben Sherratt anyways.
but not at the moment. That's the thing. They're in an all.
You can look. I'll be honest. I know Ben Sherratt's not. He's on a bad team, whatever. But he hasn't like to be honest. I look at the asking price for Ben Sherratt, and I'm surprised that it's a first round pick. And the reason I'm gonna say that is because personally speaking, I don't think Ben Sherratt is as good as what is advertised, and meaning that I think that he's overrated. And I look at a guy like Scott Perunovich, who I've watched in the juniors and has looked really good in the juniors, and I say to myself, you've already got the guy in the system who's offensively gifted as well. Why are you going to go and get a guy like Ben Sherratt just to add toughness when in reality you've already got the guy there? I think what's more important for St. Louis is finding a way to make sure that Binnington plays well. If Binnington plays well, the possibilities are endless. But
But
until then,
we already know teams like Colorado and Vegas and the likes of even Tampa and Toronto, even though they could stay as is, they're definitely going to be looking to
yeah,
add.
but there's flaws. Like what I'm saying is St.
Yeah, it could
Louis,
ruin team chemistry. Yeah, that's one
but
negative.
but that's not the point that I'm trying to. The point I'm trying to make is you look at a team like Tampa, right? Tampa, yes, they've got they always find ways to improve. But what I'm saying is that Tampa's a team that also doesn't really have like um elite prospects on defense. What I'm saying is they've got Mikhail Sergachev. After that, they don't really have anybody else. That's why they went to go get David Savard, and obviously it paid off because they won the cup. But what I'm saying is that St. Louis already have a young foundation of defensemen that can grow, and they don't have the cap space to do it. And I don't see them trading away a guy like David Perron to go do that.
And I
Right?
also
I
wanted
don't, I
to.
don't, s- you know, I don't see them trading Perron at all. If anything, if they're gonna trade one guy, I'm gonna use Ben Sherrod as an example.
They're probably going to try to move Scandela's contract
I
because
honestly think
Well,
that
why?
that Oscar Sundqvist.
yeah, 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 yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm assuming it's Sunquist. That's
Okay,
what
yeah, we'll stick with
I
that. Yeah.
honestly think it's gonna be a first rounder or second. Honestly, I do think a first round is a bit. I find that insane. If the Habs get that, I mean, I'd be extremely happy. But I find that a bit too much. I'd say a second rounder and Oscar Sundquist, and I see it working for the Habs. He's a center, which they kind of you can be you can never be short on centers. He could play right wing if anything,
or left
uh,
wing.
or left wing. He's a young guy. He's 27. He still has another year left, so you could always flip him for something else. And you get a second rounder out of it, and you get $2.7 million off your cap space, and you could afford Ben Sherratt.
Well, I mean,
Concerning
it's
Chikrin
just I don't
very
know. I
quickly.
think I think if I think St. Louis. I'm not saying that. Look, they want to make a trade. They make a trade. If they get Ben Sherrod, it's definitely an addition for them. All I'm saying is, I don't know
Because
if you want to add someone. I mean, Sungfist makes sense.
because it does make sense. I'll tell you why. The guy, you're going
But
into the playoffs, and the guys he played in the playoffs. The last time he played was in 2019 because he didn't play last season. So in
yeah.
2019, he had 1 point in 9 games. Do you really want someone like that who really doesn't really add
Oh,
anything?
you're right. You're right. I guess, but it all depends. Do you really the Canadians like? No disrespect to the Oscar Sundqvist, but I don't think the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, they may just take him just to help the Blues out, but they don't really need a guy like Oscar Sundqvist. Like to my opinion, like he's got another year left at
Well,
$2 million.
listen, I think they
I
could
don't think it
always
makes sense
take him. You could
in
always
that
take
sense.
him and flip him for something else. There's no
I
rule
guess.
saying
Well,
when you
yeah,
acquire a player you can't
No,
flip
I
him
know,
the
back.
but I'm just
deadline, this
I don't
trade
know.
deadline works in mysterious ways. We never know what could happen. There's players that get flipped after one deal. We've seen that happen many times, even during the offseason. That's happened. I also wanted to mention St. Louis fans. Even though you've been linked to Jacob Chikrin, forget him going there.
Yeah,
We did
that would
mention
be
him.
like
Yeah, we did
a
mention him
Kyrou
and stuff.
package. Forget it.
Yeah, we did mention him because it's
Yeah,
been
you guys are gonna have
reported.
to give up like Robert Thomas for that
Yeah,
guy.
they've asked for, because the asking price is so high. They wanted a first round pick, an NHL player, and a prospect. They've actually asked for either Kyrou or Thomas, and I don't think St. Louis wants to part ways with either of those guys. So I don't think that really makes sense. I
Man,
know.
Montreal
I
should have really offer sheeted fucking Robert Thomas, man. Sorry for my language, but
Not
they
only
should have
that,
offer sheeted
but
that
I don't know
guy.
if you remember when who was it that they were trying to get? I think it was when they were looking to trade Alex Galchenyuk. Robert Thomas was one of the targets that they
Yeah.
were trying to
Oh,
get.
they should have gotten
It's
that
too
guy,
bad.
man.
Yeah,
Uh,
hell,
he,
Domi wasn't a bad ad either.
and
But
he was an RFA this year, and I was like, oh, it would have been so cool to see the Habs offer him.
anyways,
he's a
I don't
hell
want
of a
to.
player.
I don't want to get
Oh,
off topic
yeah,
Anyways,
or
I'm
all
just
this
saying
stuff.
because he's a
hell of a
really good
player.
player.
Let's.
That's why.
We're already running out of time here. We just wanted to say that if we already know St. Louis is going to add a defenseman, I think it's clear as day. My pick is I'm going to stick to my to basically what's been reported and what I think makes the most sense concerning cap hit and what they're willing to give up. I think it's going to be Ben Sherratt. Chikrin, they're asking for way too much. Even though that they've had interest in him, I think there's other teams that are going to offer a lot more. Even though St. Louis do have the prospects, they have the assets to give up. I don't think they're really willing to do that. Um, Also, Nick Leddy, it's really up to Detroit if they want to retain salary, but he's more of an offensive minded player, and he's not the same Nick Leddy that we've seen in the last couple of seasons. He's dealt with a lot of injuries too. So out of those three guys, Ben Sherratt's my go-to guy. Also wanted before I ask you guys who I mean I think it's pretty clear that we could all agree that it would be Ben Sherratt, but I also wanted to report that uh Tarasenko is still indeed willing to part ways with St. Louis, but a trade's gonna only happen after the offseason because after the postseason. Oh my god! During the postseason when basically everything is said and done. Once the playoffs are done, and that's it. Because honestly, I don't think Tarasenko wants to leave St. Louis. They're in a very good spot. They're going to be contending for a Stanley Cup, and I don't think he wants to go anywhere else. Uh, so I just wanted to say that it's looking very bright for St. Louis this year and for the future because right now they're meshed with young talent and veteran presence as well.
Yeah.
So if I would have to predict where they would finish this year, I would say second or third round. I don't think they win the Stanley Cup. I don't think they're good enough. But offensively, they're fantastic. I would put them in the top five offensively. Defensively, yeah, I read numbers before statistics even proving that they're good defensively. But I don't know. There's just something weird when comparing them to other to other teams. And you look at their defense. I mean, they could prove me wrong, but again, like Luca was mentioning, It's all on Bennington. It's based off his performance. It's either gonna make or break St. Louis's run for a Stanley Cup this season. Anyways, that's all I have left to say. I don't know if you guys have anything else to say before we conclude.
Yeah,
Well,
no, I don't.
what's
I
our
don't really.
prediction for where they go in the playoffs? Usually we do that.
I'll.
That's
I
how we
think.
usually
Look,
close it
I think
off.
second. I think second round. I think they'll make it out of the first, but I don't know if they'll make it out of the second. To me, it depends. If Binnington plays well, they have a chance. But it's got to depend on honestly goaltending. I think that's what it's going to depend on. So I'm going to go second round. For St. Louis.
And you, Chris?
First round, sadly. I mean,
First
Really?
round.
it is up to the goalie. But listen, if I'm going based on what I see so far, I think it's a first round exit.
Yeah.
Look,
First and second round.
it's
I
going to
think.
be very exciting for St. Louis to work around their cap heading to the trade deadline. Guys, don't let that fool you. Armstrong made it very clear, and even with the reports from Elliot Friedman and LeBron and the casual TSN and Sportsnet guys and even ESPN guys and Daily Faceoff guys, they're in the market for a defenseman, and those three names have been linked to the St. Louis Blues. It could be somebody else, maybe someone at a shorter price in terms
Yeah.
of cap hit and also their being a UFA, so essentially a rental. But we'll see what happens moving forward. What are your thoughts on the St. Louis Blues? Do you agree with our takes? Obviously, we tried our best to assess this team as we did with other teams. We try to be pretty on the ball with every single team. We are missing maybe some key information sometimes, but we allow you guys, St. Louis Blue fans and other fans of other hockey teams we cover, to help us in that domain. Mention things that we did not mention, things that maybe you would like to notify us about, so maybe we could talk about in the future. Also, notify other fans within the NHL about the St. Louis Blues and what makes them so good. So that concludes today's episode. We'll see you soon. We're looking forward to the trade deadline that's coming up within the next month and a half. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and we'll see you on the next episode, guys. Until then.